Chapter 5-5 is a really good kind of final section to chapter 5. And the reason is because it's really just a review itself. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. This is everything that we have been doing in chapter 4 and in chapter 5, just kind of all culminating in one section. So really, this is going to serve as kind of a extra review for the test. And then, of course, your Khan Academies are the other part of your review, and you'll have till Friday to work on those. This is solving multi-step equations and inequalities. And we've already solved multi-step equations, and we have solved inequalities. So now we're just kind of lumping this all into one. And notice at the top, and your homework is the exact same way, all right? Notice at the top, this section right here says solve and check. And then this section down here says solve and graph. So your homework's the same way. At the top, when it's an equation, you're going to solve and check it. When it's an inequality, you're going to solve and graph it. Okay. All right. So we're only going to pick and choose a few of these. So all the ones you have in front of you, we are not doing, but so we are going to start with number 1. And just as a review, and I already have it written down, these are the 3 steps when solving equations and inequalities, right? We've talked about these before. Distribute, combine like terms, then draw your wall, and that's when you start moving things from left and right across the wall, okay? So we're going to follow that same pattern every equation to solve the equations and the inequalities. All right, so number 1, now when you do your homework, you're going to have to do it on a separate sheet of paper. There's just too much work to fit on this little bitty space that they give you. So I've got some extra paper added to the bottom of this. You guys have the back of your notes, and then for your homework, just add a sheet of lined paper. So we have 4 times j minus 7 equals 12. So the first step is distribute. Well, when we distribute, I'm doing number 1 here. When we distribute, that means we multiply 4 times everything inside the parentheses. And that gives us 4 times j is 4j. And 4 times negative 7 is negative 28. So minus 28 equals 12. So that's the distribute step. The combining like terms step, always glance and see if there's any terms on the left or the right. You can combine just on the left and the right. So just looking at the left side, 4j and negative 28, nothing there we can combine. And on the right, nothing we can combine. So now we're ready to go to our wall, right? Where we're going to put a wall where there's an equal sign, and we're going to move things left and right. There is already, all the j's are already on the left. So let's leave them there. That means we're going to move the numbers over to the right. Well, negative 28 can be zeroed off this side by adding 28. And if we do it to one side of the wall, we have to do it to the other. That means that negative 28 and positive 28 cancel out, leaving 4j on this side. Our equal sign should stay right on the wall all the way down. 12 plus 28 is 40. Okay. Now our very last step is always to divide off that coefficient if we have one. So we would divide this side by 4. Because we divided the left side of the wall, we have to divide on the right. Our equal sign stays on the wall. Our j is now by itself, and 40 divided by 4 is 10. So our answer is j equals 10, but now we have to check. So I'm going to go over to where my problem was, and where there was a j, which is right here, I'm going to plug in a 10. So it would look like this: 4 parentheses, 10 minus 7 equals 12. Well, we got to reduce a little, and inside the parentheses, let's reduce that before we do anything else. So 4, 10 minus 7 is 3. What's 4 times 3? Woohoo! Our check checks. Our answer is j minus 10, and our check checked out that it was the correct answer. Not bad. And like I said, we've been doing this for about 4 weeks now, so it should start to, I know it can get confusing, and if you do struggle with solving equations or inequalities, I'm telling you, once you distribute and combine like terms, it will really help you to put that little squiggly line down the middle and give yourself that wall. It just kind of helps you stay focused and centered on where you're moving things. And like our jump start today, I had a lot of people throughout the day, when you had 2W and 8W together on the right, they tried to subtract 2W twice to get rid of the W's, but they subtracted 2W twice on the right side. And what does that do to our scale, right? It totally unbalanced our equation. So the squiggly line helps you remember, or the wall that I call it, helps you remember that if you do something on one side of it, to keep everything balanced, you have to be on the other side as well, okay? So that's a little tangent rabbit trail. All right, so now you're probably going to want to flip your paper over and work on the back because there's not enough room, because number 3 is kind of a big problem. And what I always tell people with this, bigger does not mean that it's harder to do. You still follow the 3 same steps in the same order: distribute, combine like terms, and then solve across the wall. So if we take number 3, and I'm going to write it on the back here, we have 7 times 2p plus 3 minus 8 equals 6p plus 29. And it looks really hard, right? It looks very complicated, but we're going to follow our same steps that we have been used to following. Step 1 is distribute. If I see parentheses, and I do here, so that means multiplication. 7 times 2p is 14p, and positive 7 times positive 3 is positive 21. Okay, that's my distribute. I didn't do anything with the rest of the problem, so I'm just going to drop it down, write it again. Okay, that took care of my distribute step. Right, these are our 4 steps that we talked about. Distribute. Okay, that's that step. Now we want to look to see if there are any like terms we can combine. And this is taking each side separately. This is not moving things left and right yet. This is just looking at the left-hand side and saying, is there anything over there that's like that I can write in a more simplified manner, right? And the answer would be that yes, you've got this 21 and this negative 8. They're both whole numbers, or they're both, I shouldn't say whole numbers, they're both numbers without a variable. So we can combine them. So that gives us 14p, because we're not messing with that. 21 minus 8 is positive 13. And then we didn't write, or we didn't do anything to this side. So this was our combine like terms step. Okay, so we've distributed, we've combined like terms, and now our wall comes in. And if it helps you, right, do this on your paper. I'll never mind it being on there, because it really does help keep you stay kind of centered. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is let's move all of our p's over to the left, or combine all of our p's on one side. So if I subtract 6p from the right, I'm going to subtract 6p from the other side of the wall. And notice when I subtract, I always write it underneath the other common term on that side, because it makes it very easy to simplify. So when I draw my line here, 14p minus 6p is 8p. I didn't do anything with the plus 13. My equal sign should stay on my wall. And 6p minus 6p goes away, and I'm left with 29 over here. Then I want to look to where I need to move my numbers. I moved all my variables to the left, so I'm going to move all my numbers to the right. So minus 13 and minus 13. And when I simplify this, the 13 and the negative 13 are gone. So all that's left on the left is 8p. My equal sign is still centered, and 29 minus 13 is 16. And then the last step is always to divide off that coefficient if needed, or the number in front of the variable, which I'm going to do. And 8 and 8 cancel out, leaving me p equals 2. Okay, and that was this whole thing from here on down. Right, from here on down was the moving across the wall steps. And there was several steps to it. All right, now I have to check, right? Because it says solve and check. So to get credit for this assignment, at the top half of the assignment, you have to solve and check. Now, when you solve, you could solve at any point you wanted to. Okay, I'm going to use this step right here as my solving step. It's a little bit more simplified. I've already distributed. I've already combined like terms. If you're pretty confident that these 2 steps are correct, then you can use this second step here to check. So I'm going to move this so it's not in my way. So I'm going to go to this step right here, 14p, but instead of a p, I'm going to put parentheses, plus 13 equals 6 parentheses where there was a p, plus 29. So I'm rewriting this step. And in place of the P, I'm going to put a 2. So everywhere where there was a P, I'm going to put a 2. Now let's simplify first the left side and then see if it comes out on the right side is the same. 14 times 2 is 28 plus 13. 28 plus 13 is 41. So if I simplify the other side, hopefully it comes to 41. That's our goal, right? 6 times 2 is 12 plus 29. 12 plus 29 is 41. So it works. My check checks out. So my answer is P equals 2, and it did work in my check. Okay. So longer, more difficult, right? Seems a lot more difficult. It isn't if you'll still take it. It's more time consuming. I will give you that. These take a little bit of extra time, but distribute, combine like terms, and then move. As long as you follow those steps in that order every time, I think you'll be fine. All right. I do want to do number 7 and number 12. And number 12, I won't even necessarily work all the way out. I just want to help you distribute and combine like terms, and then I'll stop. But I do want to work number 7 all the way out because first of all, it has parentheses on both sides, and there's one like that on your homework. So I want you to have an example. Plus it's decimals, and sometimes decimals freak people out a little bit. You guys can use a calculator in my class, right? So decimals are not harder. You just have to punch them in the calculator, okay? So let's do number 7 next. I'm going to do it down here on the back. So flip it over on the back. And number 7 is 3 times x minus 3 equals 5 times 1.5 plus x parentheses. And I'm going to move that out of the way just so it's not in my screen here. Okay. First step is distribute. Okay. We have some parentheses over here that we need to distribute. And completely separate, like it's a whole separate problem right at this point, we have some parentheses over here we need to distribute. So working just on the left at first, 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times -3 is -9, so -9. Okay, that's distributing on the left. Now I want to do the same thing on the right, and I want to distribute that 5. So 5 times 1.5, again, right? Don't make life harder. Punch it in your calculator. It's 7.5. And 5 times x is plus 5x. So we've distributed. All right. Are there any like terms here that we need to combine? Either on the left or on the right, looking at them separately. No, there's not, because there's just an x and a plain old number on both sides. So this is where my wall comes in. I'm going to put my wall here. And now I'm going to, and it doesn't matter which way you move or which one you start with, I'm going to move the 5x over. I had somebody ask earlier, could you move the 3x over? Yep, you sure can, right? If you want to move the 3x to the right and the numbers to the left, you end up with the exact same answer. But I'm going to do it this way. 3x minus 5x is -2x. I didn't do anything with the -9. My equal sign stays on the wall. 7.5 drops down, and my 5x minus 5x disappears. Okay, it zeroes out, goes away, however you want to say it. Now, the other thing is I need to get my numbers over to the right. So I have a -9, so I'm going to add 9 at one side of the wall, got to do it to the other. And I'm left with that -9 and +9 zero out on the left, which is what I wanted. And I'm left with -2x, equal sign on the wall. 7.5 plus 9 is 16.5. And then my last step is always dividing off that coefficient or the number attached to the variable, which is a -2 here. And again, right? Don't make your life harder. Those cancel out. X equals, put it in your calculator. Now, I will say this, and I say it a lot, but I like to repeat it. Don't rely on these junky calculators. If you put in the calculator 16.5 divided by a -2, it's inevitably, it's going to subtract something just because these calculators are not the greatest. You can't use parentheses. So don't rely on the calculator for your signs. If I'm dividing a positive by a negative, my answer is going to be what? a negative. I'm going to stick the negative sign right there to remind myself of this. Now in my calculator, I'm not going to mess with that negative. I'm going to punch in 16.5 divided by 2, and I'm going to get 8.25. And I know it's a negative 8.25 because I'm dividing a negative by a positive. So that's what I'm calling my answer. Now I need to plug in. There's a couple of different places you could plug in. I like to usually plug in after I've combined or distributed and combined like terms. So for me, that is right here. That's this step right here. So that's where I'm going to go and check. So I'm going to use 3 open parentheses minus 9 equals 7.5 plus 5 and then open parentheses. And now, right, in place of my parentheses, in place of my X, what am I going to put? I'm going to put negative 8.25, right? Negative 8.25, because that's what I'm calling X here. And now I'm going to check to see if it works out. Again, right? Don't reinvent the wheel here. Use your calculator. A positive 3 times a negative 8 is going to give me a positive or a negative? Negative. So I'm going to stick my negative sign here because I'm not relying on my calculator for that. And in my calculator, I'm going to put 3 times 8.25. And I get 24.75. And I've already know that that's a negative 24.75 minus 9. And then I'm going to go ahead and combine negative 24.75 minus 9. And I get negative 33.75. That's simplifying the left. Now I'm going to simplify the right and see if I get negative 33.75, right? That's our goal. So 7.5, sorry. 5 times a negative 8 is going to give me a negative something, right? 5 times a negative, positive 5 times a negative 8.25 is going to give me a negative. And then in my calculator, if I punch in 5 times 8.25, I get negative 41.25. And now I've got 7.5, which is positive, minus 41.25. The signs don't match, so I subtract the two numbers, and I take the sign of the bigger, which happily equals negative 33.75. So my checked out. When you're dealing with decimals, just go slow. Do it step by step like you know how to do. Simplify as you go, and then use your calculator for all of the big multiplication and division problems, okay? Make your life a little bit easier. Are we good there? All right, I'm actually not going to work all the way through on number 12. I just want to show you a few, I don't know, tips as far as distributing and combining like terms. So I see parentheses, I should immediately think distribution, right? So if I distribute that, I have 5n plus 3, didn't do anything. That's coming from right here. I didn't do anything on that side of the equation. So 5n plus 3 equals 2 times n is 2n. 2 times 2 is positive 4. So that's my distribution. And then that minus 3n right here, I just tack it onto the end because I didn't do anything with it yet. So I just kind of tack it on the end. Now I look for like terms. Are there any like terms on the left? 5n plus 3. Can I combine any of that? So I'm going to leave that side alone and I'm going to look to the other side. I've got 2n plus 4 minus 3n. Are there any like terms here? What are they? Yeah, the 2n and the negative 3n are on the same side of the equation, so I can combine them. So I'm going to rewrite this side because I'm not doing anything with it. And then 2n minus 3n is what? Negative 1n. Good. 2n minus 3n. So 2 minus 3 is negative 1. And I didn't do anything with that plus 4, so I drop it down. Now I've distributed. I've combined like terms. So now it's time for the wall. And just really quickly, I'm not even going to really, I don't want to even do it quicker. So quick, you probably can't. As far as writing it down with me, I just want you to see me work it out. But I've got plus 1n, plus 1n. gives me 6n plus 3 equals 4. And then there is a reason why I'm working this way all the way out, and I'll show you. Minus 3 and minus 3 leaves me 6n equals 4 minus 3 is 1. When I divide by 6 and divide by 6, this looks really weird, but stick with it. It's the answer. N equals, what's my answer here? Can 1/6 be reduced? Yeah, you're right. It's just 1/6. And when you plug it back in, it's fine, right? If you go here to this 6n plus 3 equals 4 step, 6 times 1/6 plus 3 equals 4. What's 6 times 1/6? 1 plus 3 equals 4. Does 4 equal 4? So even the check works out. So if you get a fraction as an answer, that's okay. All right. If you get a decimal as an answer, that's okay. Just plug it back in. Yes, sir. Okay. Does this help a little bit? Good, 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 good. That makes me happy. All right. I do want to do number 15 with you as an example with the inequality. And whoops. All right. Looking at this, what's the easiest thing to get rid of first that I always like to get rid of first? Yes. No, I don't see a double sign. Yeah, well, the fraction. Really, the fraction is what I'm going to go after first. And because 2/3 times that whole parentheses area, 2 times that whole thing, remember if they're multiplied, they're married, they're 1. So if I multiply this whole side by a 3 and this side by a 3, this 3 and this 3 cancel out. And the reason I'm doing this is because you have one almost just like this on your homework. Okay. The 3 and the 3 cancel out on the left, but look what doesn't cancel out, the 2, right? So don't lose, don't lose that 2. It still stays out there. And 4 times 3 is 12. And now you still have to distribute, but it makes the problem a little bit easier to work. Okay. So if you'll get rid of the fraction at the beginning of it, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to work. I'm going to distribute. That gives me, 24 minus 2x is greater than 12. Now this is where my wall comes in because I don't have any more distribution. I've already done that. I can't combine any like terms. I want to get the 24 moved over. So I'm going to minus 24. And minus 24. And I get negative 2x is greater than 12 minus 24 is negative 12. Now, if I divide by a negative 2 on both sides, I just divided by a negative on an inequality. What do I have to do? Yes. Yep. I got to go. I have to take it from a greater than to a less than. And then I get x is less than 6. Now, this is number 15 that I'm working. And here, right here is the graph for number 15. And I want to point something out to you. And this is just a little trick to help you make sure that you're kind of on the right track with your answer. Don't write this part down. If I was to get x is, don't write this down. If I were to get x is less than 18, and I go up here to my graph, can I graph that on that graph that's given to me? There is no 18 on that given graph, right? That's a big red flag that I messed up somewhere. So if you get an answer that doesn't fit on the graph you were given, your answer is wrong, and that tells you to go back and check it. Yes, ma'am.
On the graph, like the book graph, would it always like the totally like the middle of the graph?
Usually, not always, but at least so far what I've seen, it usually is there in the middle. So open circle over 6, and it's all x is less than, so it's this direction. So that would be your final answer. Remember, at the top, we solve and check. At the bottom, we solve and graph. Yes, sir. Do you have a question?
No.
Oh, sorry. Now, something I want to point out, okay, really quickly, and I'm not even going to work the problem all the way to its finale. I just want to show you this. When we divide or multiply by a negative, we flip the sign, right? That's when we've got the wall and we divide or multiply both sides by a negative. I want to show you that on number 19, when you distribute, that is not dividing or multiplying by a negative. as far as flipping your sign. Does that make sense? So if you want to make yourself a note out next to 19, because you have one like this on your homework, okay? You do not flip the sign when you're distributing. Okay? Distributing is just a simplifying thing. It's not actually working the problem. So when you distribute that 3 into the parentheses, you're rewriting the problem in a different way, but you're not really starting to solve the problem yet. Okay? Now we've distributed, we've gotten rid of the parentheses. Now that our wall comes in, now that's when, if you divide or multiply by a negative, this is where you would flip the sign. And so here we would add 9 and add 9 and give us negative 3x is greater than 16.5. Now look what we would do. Now we divide by a negative 3. We did it on both sides of the wall. This is where the sign flip comes in. Okay, so it's important to keep those two things separate. Distribution is not the same as dividing or multiplying each side by a negative. Good? All right. For those of you at home, it's odds only. The top portion you have to solve and check to get full credit. The bottom portion you have to solve and graph. Email me if you have any questions.